Welcome back. Jack's trying to get in the way here. He's decided he wants to see what everyone is doing. We'll just move Jack back. Those who didn't see yesterday, Jack, apart from helping me stay in the centre of the shot, is an Eastern Bandicoot, which is my logo. And he has some beautiful markings when the light picks them up properly. And I can't tell from the angle I'm seeing the camera if the light's picking those markings up. Here's our mascot, and he's just going to get his nose out of the shot and out of the way. So we're almost at the end of this round. We have one more double crochet to go, and so that in there. More, and then we have the last treble crochet into the front post of the double crochet in the round below. So going through, coming up behind from the back of the stitch to the front, round, round, back through. Helps, yet again, to yarn over twice before doing a treble crochet. Try that one again. Through, back in, pull that one through, and depending on where you started your last round, if you change colours, try and start this round from the first stitch in one of the side fans, so you get in that when you get to the end after this stitch, you're joining straight into here. You don't have to worry about whether or not you've missed a stitch on the back. So there should only be one stitch skipped on the back, and this then just slip stitch straight into the third chain. Get in there. So the third chain up that we started the round with. And for some reason, I'm getting the wrong piece of string here. Usually once you've gone through that chain once, it's really easy to get the hook back into it. So we close that one off. Just show you where we're at with the square. So this is the extent of the original pattern. And you could just keep on working on more of the squares up to this point. And if you join these together on this pattern, you'll end up with these wonderful links that cross through to the next square along. If you keep doing repeats of this square, join them up, you'll get this nice linking across just from the front post stitches here. Because I'm only doing one of these squares, I'm not going to do any more. What I needed to do to be able to adjust this square to my blanket was I had to decide whether or not to keep increasing the size of this square or whether or not to make 4 patches into a panel. Now the square as it is 25 stitches wide, so it's 25 across, 25 down. And the maximum size that the squares I'm using on this blanket can be is 40 stitches. So the square is too big to do 4 of them joined together into a patch, which is what we did with the squares from yesterday's patch. So we did 4 of the patches, joined them all together, and then put a border on those ready to be joined to the next square, which is this one. So because it's too big to do that, and if I took down any of the rows to make it a smaller square, we would lose this beautiful design here where we've got these links coming across, we've got this border coming through on the round, on the 5th round, because we've gone into the back loops only, and it would lose all that detail, and that would, I think, be detrimental to the pattern. It just wouldn't be the same. So what I did was I worked out how many rounds I needed to do to get, we're just going to move that out of the side because I'm done with that for this moment. I had to work out how many rounds were needed to get us up to the right size for the square. Remembering that 40 stitches is what I've set as my maximum. Ideally, for the joining method I'm using, you want a number divisible by 3. So the best number of stitches to have is 29. And, 39, not 29. So you want, if you can, 39 stitches. And if it's a stitch either way, 40, 41, 20, 38, 39, you can fudge it a bit. It's not going to be hugely detrimental, because the way this pattern joins to the other squares is through a braid join. So you're going to use chains, and if you need to, you can always slip in and fudge it and add an extra chain in there to be able to adjust that, so that when it does have the squares joined together, just put these side by side for a moment and make sure they are in shot. So when we get to the next side of this and join these squares together, a stitch or so in either direction, extra or less, is not really going to make the biggest difference, because you're going to have this lattice work coming across. And when you've got the size of this blanket 100 squares, no one is going to notice one stitch extra on your chain loops as you're working around to make these fit together. So I said yesterday, because we finished early and the video had been so long, and I'm trying very hard today not to take so long to go through this process with you. I said yesterday I would go through how we do this final edge on here and how we join the two squares together, because this blanket does get joined as it goes along, rather than leaving it where you've got all your patches and then you've made all these wonderful patches and you're left with putting them all together in one big heap, and you sit there and you go, oh, do I really want to? So what I'll do today for the rest of this video is showing you what I did to adjust the size, and we'll be adding on the loops, or the final loops, onto this square. And I've stopped here. I've already started, and you can see I've started here and I've gone all the way around the square, and I've stopped here because this is the edge where I'm going to have to join it to the other square. So we'll do that as well. So how do we get from 25 stitches to 39 stitches? And simple way to think about it is, if you're doing double crochet rows, every time you get to a corner, if you add in 2 and you've got your chain space there as well, then each row that you do beyond the size of the original square, if you're doing double crochets, is going to add an extra 4 stitches. So at the end of row 6, which is the original pattern, there are 25 stitches. For if we add on then another row, so this is then row 7, adding on 4 stitches, it becomes 29. Then on row 8, we're adding another 4 stitches, and that becomes, 25, 29, 29 here, row 7, so row 6, 25, row 7, 29, row 8 becomes, I'm trying to add here, I'm not great at it, can you tell, 33. So we get to row 9 as trebles, we've got 33 stitches across, which means I only need an extra 6 stitches aside to get to 39. If I did the final round in double crochet, I would have to put 2 in at the ends, which will make it 4, and it will take it up to 40, which, if I can avoid that, I'd rather do that. Whereas if you do it a little bit differently and take it down, what if we do single crochet into this space instead, and we add in an extra chain in these loops? So we go, if I add in 2 stitches here and 2 stitches here, that's our 4 stitches without oversizing it. So what I mean, if I bring this one back, and if you compare the size of this square when I edge it up with the one below, it's almost the same size, we're just waiting for this edging. So if I had added a double crochet row onto this square, it would be bigger than the first square. And even though there is 40 odd stitches to a side, it will work out close to that, the square will be too large. So the final round, we went from 33, and then we needed to get an extra 6 stitches in. So we've added 2 stitches here on each side, that gives us 4. And then we add an extra chain stitch in the corners, gives us the 2 that we need to get the 6 stitches extra. But I've done it in single crochet instead. So it's stopped the square growing quite so much. It's now about the same size as the square from day one, with enough stitches, with 39 stitches, which means that we can do, or easily do, a outside border with the loops that you've got. If you, depending on where you start, I'll start from here, and you want to count up so that you make sure that where you start from will end in the corner with your 3 chain ending up in the corner. So you've got to do a little bit of counting. So I had to slip stitch up, do a single crochet, 3 chain, skip 2, single crochet into the 3rd stitch, chain 3, skip 2, single crochet, and you end up with 12 on a side. So you've got 12 of these loops on each side of your piece of work, and I have 12 of the loops on each side of yesterday's patch, and that's where I'll join up the 2 patches. So if you end up with, 38 stitches or 40 stitches, you just do a little bit of fudging, and you can probably find it would be better to do the fudging in the middle of the sides of your square than out at the corners, because when you've got it together as a quilt or a blanket, you want to try and get those corners next to each other, or as in line as possible, and it will be less noticeable if you've got an extra chain or an extra space or one less space in your chain loops if they're in the center of the side of your patch. And I'm very good at fudging when I have to. So to finish off, to get the rest of this joined in to the first patch, what we're going to do is I've already chained and done my chains around 2 sides and a bit, and I've gotten to the 3rd side that's complete. So it's the one prior to where we start from. You can't join it from here because you've already started crocheting this side. So I'm going to join it on this one, which is the last one, or the last side, and you want to make sure that your squares are both one side up. Now you can do this, so I tend to hold them so that the wrong sides are together, because we're working from the top, and I've done 1 single crochet joining this loop into the corner space, and I've marked that before I've started this outer round, so that I know when I get to this corner I have to stop crocheting and join it to the patch over here, or to the square over there. So I don't need that marker now. It was just a reminder marker. What I do need to do is get this, and there went the tripod. It's currently being a bit stuck because my battery decided it was flat, and my charger cord is not the longest. So I'm just going to make sure I've got enough yarn pulled off from the roll to be able to do this. So I'm going to pull that stitch marker out because that was just holding it in place so it didn't come through and out. So to join this square, these corners each have 3 stitches in them, and so we're going to do 2 chain and chain again, sorry, yes, 1 chain. Before you do the second chain, slip that onto your finger so that you can take your hook out, and with your hook you want to go in from the top into that 3 chain space in your corner, pick this up again, pull it through, slip stitch, and then you want to do 1 chain and then a single crochet back into the corner space of the first patch that you're joining. So a single crochet. I usually do this with both of them in my lap, so this will be interesting to see how we go. So again, we're going to do the same thing. So chain 1 and take that loop up onto your finger, put your hook through the next 3 chain space, pick this one up again, pull it through, a slip stitch, and you're going to go into the 3rd stitch. So skip 2 here and then, sorry, do a single chain first. On the 3rd stitch here, come into a single crochet into there. So I'll show you what we've got. We then have those 2 joined at both those loops. So doing that again, chain stitch, the loop off the hook and over your finger, with the hook from the top side, the front of your patch, will square, go through the next 3 chain loop, pull the yarn tight, come through, slip stitch that closed, 1 chain, and then skip 2 stitches and into the 3rd stitch, do a single crochet. So again, chain 1 over your finger into the next loop of the patch you're joining it to, through, slip stitch, chain 1, back to the patch that you're currently joining, skip 2 spaces, so 1, 2, and into the 3rd space, do a single crochet. And you do that all the way along the side of the patch, and as you go along you can see it's creating a braid pattern. So you get this really nice braiding in between the squares, which will add to the overall width and length of this blanket. So if we have a quick look at that as it stands now, and I'll pull tight slightly. This is my extraordinarily old tape. It's the braid itself is adding on about 2 centimeters within that space to the width of this blanket. So for each join, you've got to remember, when you're taking into account what is the size of this blanket going to be, you need to take into account how wide the join itself is going to make it as well. So for me, 2 centimeters, that's not a problem, given that these patches, before we put this border on, are approximately 20 centimeters wide, and I'm trying to keep them as close to that as possible. So 22 centimeters, then we'll end up with a blanket, remembering this is a 10 by 10 blanket, a blanket that's 220 centimeters in each direction, which will cover a bed really nicely. So we've slip stitched that into the next one, 1 chain, skip 2 stitches into the 3rd stitch with a single crochet, and this one here, chain 1, so back over the finger, into the next loop, come back through, slip stitch that in place, chain 1. I'm just going to keep working to the end. I will put a timestamp. If you're comfortable that you've got this process down, feel free to fast forward ahead. I'm going to keep going because I'm just going to take my time so that you can see me doing this fairly slowly, so that if you want to keep watching me do this just to make sure you've got the hang of it properly, you're welcome to. I won't be at all offended if you decide to skip ahead to the next section. So chain 1 after slip stitching, skip 2 stitches into the 3rd, single crochet, chain 1, take the loop yarn over your fingers so that you can release the hook, through the next chain loop on the patch you're joining your square to, slip stitch, chain stitch, get into a rhythm with that, skip 2, single crochet, chain stitch onto your finger, through the loop on the other square, slip stitch that in place, 1 chain stitch, back to your square you're working on to join, skip 2, single crochet into the 3rd stitch, again chain 1 over the finger, through the loop, whoop, pick it back up on your hook, slip stitch, chain stitch, skip 2, 1, 2 into the 3rd with a single crochet, chain stitch onto your finger, the hook through your loop, pull that through, slip stitch, chain, skip 1, 2, single crochet into the 3rd, chain. It's a bit like doing a tie. Does it work around in and out through the rabbit hole? Oh, never remembered how to say it because I learned to tie a tie when I was about 4 for school. And we had this ghastly grey pinafore with a white shirt. I can't remember what the tie was. I know it was blue, but what sort of stripes it had, I can't remember. Chain 1, we're nearly at the corner. 1, 2, skip, beautiful. So 1, 2, the 3rd stitch here, single crochet, that one, chain 1. Now we are into the corner space for this one, which is great. Try not to lose the loop in there. That. Chain 1 into the corner for here. Chain 1. Okay, so we'll just pause there for a moment so you can see what we've got. And we've got this really nice join in between, and it's braided through. It's not going to go anywhere. Just loosen that up a bit and hold it up with some light coming through or some dark. And I just think it's a really pretty join for doing your squares or doing on your squares without being bulky. So when you put your hands over this, it's lace. It's very flat. It doesn't bulk up, and it gives you this beautiful lace join or band in between each of your squares. Excuse me. So from this corner, we need to do, we've got our loop, so that is our loop going through into here. So we don't do another 3 chain into that corner space that's already there. So we find the hook. From there, we're going to do 3 chain and straight down this side. So 1, 2, 3. Again, skip 2. Don't forget this stitch here. I forget it regularly and end up with a miscount and have to go back and find it again. Single crochet, chain 3, 2, 3, skip 2, single crochet into the 3rd, one, 2, 3, skip 2, 1, 2, single crochet into the 3rd, 1, 2, 3, skip 2, single crochet into the 3rd, to the end. I'm just going through this rather quickly now. So 3, skipping 2 into the 3rd. Now, if I counted right when I first started and in placing the stitch, this chain 3 should end up in the space here. So 1, 2, it's going to slip stitches sort of one out, which means somewhere along the line I've possibly gone too far one direction or the other. 1 stitch out, as I said, is not going to worry me at all. I'm just going to chain it straight in. Because it's not going to affect this blanket in the long run. So pull that through, get rid of the stitch marker. So then that can be woven in down underneath. And that is patches for day 1, the square for day 2, with a braid join down the middle. Now, tomorrow, when I get to tomorrow's, I will be doing, I am somewhere, I've got it around somewhere. It is a much lacier pattern, and it's a much lacier square. Again, it's going to be 1 single square as opposed to 4 squares that have been sewn or crocheted together into a single panel. And it has a lot of puff stitches with a lot of chain spaces as well. Again, it looks like it's going to be difficult, and it's not. It's actually a really simple pattern, and it looks really good when it's finished. So I hope you enjoyed today's video, that if you learnt something or felt that you learnt something or enjoyed the video, please press the like button. If you want to continue watching these videos, click subscribe. This is a 100-day project. This was day 2, and I am doing a different patterned patchwork or crocheted square for each day of the project. So there are 98 left to go, and you will find links to the patterns, links to my blog site and my Pinterest boards in the description below, as well as timestamps to move through the video. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you all have a great day.